All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast for another exciting episode of this year's summer series. And today we are talking to an incredible woman who, along with her partner, has built a $4 million property portfolio, Ben. And it started by buying the local drug dealer's house and renovating it. You got to hear that story. What else do we cover, Ben?
Well, we also learn how they made that, doing their hard by living in a caravan, and really a story of pushing forward is what I'm talking about here, Bryce. So I really can't wait until we talk about Catherine's journey to success and also starting a bit later too. Very good story here.
It is a very good story, folks. Let's rip into the show.
Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, Ben, very excited day today. We are talking with TPC listener Catherine Burton about her journey. Welcome to the Property Couch, Catherine.
Thank you, Bryce. Hi, Ben.
G'day,
Hi.
Catherine. Thrilled to have you on.
We're excited to chat with you, Catherine. And like all summer series guests, there's a little bit of nerves that we want to work through here. And I guess the best place to do that is for our audience to get to know you. And as you know, as a podcast listener, it really helps us to sort of get a bit of the psychology when you were growing up, and if there was any money conversations that you were having with your family. So yeah, let's get to know you. Let's get to know what it was like at the beginning for you. Did you have any conversations about money over the dinner table?
Well, we did have conversations with money over the dinner table, but unfortunately it was due to the lack of money when I was growing up. So I grew up in the country. I grew up mostly on properties in country New South Wales, and we lived a very transient lifestyle. We moved around a lot. I went to 13 schools over my childhood. And we were
Wow.
always struggling for money, like struggling to do anything. We rarely had holidays. It was always front of mind, but for the wrong reason. So it was a bit of a struggle for our family. One of 4 kids. So yeah,
One of
it was
4.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
But we've got to lean into 13 schools. There's only 12 school years.
That's right. Some years we did 6 months in a school. So the nature of work that my father was doing was very seasonal work. So the work was only available during different seasons of the year. So we had to travel around for that work and went from kind of country New South Wales up into country Queensland.
So like a jackaroo or a shearer, or what are we talking here?
Diesel mechanic, so farm machinery mostly. Yep. Yeah, so repairs of that. Yep. So when it was harvesting season, it would be all hands on deck, and machinery breaks down quite often. So they would be repairing the machinery, getting it up and working again, and then moving on to the next area. Tractors, yeah, all sorts of things.
And Catherine, so whilst that's happening, Mum's looking after the 4 of you, and sort of where do you fit in the pecking order inside the siblings in your family?
So I'm the eldest of them all. So I was the boss, and Mum was a stay-at-home mum. And the last place that we were at school, which was actually for 4 years, we used to have to drive the car to the bus stop to meet the bus and then travel an hour and a half into school each day. So yeah, it was quite a different life to what I guess a lot of people grow up. But a lot of country kids, that's pretty normal life for them.
Yeah. What did that have on your sense of feeling settled, or the friendships that you were trying to form, or whatever? When it sounds like the last school there was some longevity there, but early on it sounds like you would have had to meet new friends and get settled quickly and all that sort of stuff. What tell us what that was like.
I think I was really good at making friends really quickly early on, like just kind of getting in and getting to know people quite quickly. So I think that's helped me in my later life. I'm able to kind of, I guess, read people really well, sort of get to know what people, what they're about a little bit. So I have a kind of a good sense of judgment, I guess, of people, of characters and things. I always thought that people just did that. Like, that's what I thought, that people just kind of moved around a lot. And it wasn't until I left school that I realized that no, it's not like the most normal life. But I think what it taught me was resilience and be able to be very adaptable to, things that life throws at you, and making the most of what you have. Like we couldn't go roller skating, back then, or go to the movies or anything like that. So it was all about kind of being very you had to kind of self motivate yourself and amuse yourself, with your brothers and sisters. So yeah, so I think it creates really resilience in you.
And Catherine, when did you realise that your life and the money sort of coming in and out of the household was different to other kids? Given obviously you're moving around with lots of schools, so you probably didn't have a bit of that peer pressure about the genes or the next fad or something along those lines in terms of wanting bicycles or that type of thing. So how did you how old were you when you started to realise that the money was tight in the household?
Oh, I think I kind of, when I was a teenager, as a teenager, young girl, I just wanted the latest pair of jeans or the new cosy or things like that. And I would, you'd be begging your mum for this new cosy that, was the latest. And I guess, she would have to say, like, well, no, you can't just have that. So you'd wait till it was your birthday or your Christmas. So you'd kind of save up something and then ask for it then, rather than, just asking for it and getting it at any time of the year. So yeah.
And did you have any sort of part-time jobs or anything like that? That sort of, once you said, well, once mum and dad weren't able to provide for me specifically, did that sort of encourage you as the eldest to get out there and potentially, if you had some stability, try and look for some part-time work?
I think I had an opportunity to go to Sydney during school holidays, and I went down and stayed with my aunt, and I worked in Mr. Whippy, and I was there over the school holidays. And I made all this money, all this cash, because it was all cash back then. And
Yeah.
I was like, what am I going to spend this money on? And I'd write up lists of things, and somehow it all ended up disappearing over that 6 weeks. But it was I'd kind of never realized until I'd seen it all there, all this cash, and it was like, wow, this is all mine, and all I have to do is work for it and get it, not save it, not at that point, that's for sure.
So what sort of management of money did you, so you said there was conversations about the lack of money. There's obviously been a lot of transientness in your world, but when you take us to the time when you became independent, you moved out, you're getting your income
Mm.
or whatever it was that you were doing at the time of independence.
Mm.
How were you managing your money, and what were you using as the guide for that?
I don't know if, when I started working full time when I left school and I moved to Sydney, I don't know that it was money management. It was more about money spending. Like, I'd get it, I'd save it, and I'd basically live from week to week. I had,
Yeah.
I was living with some relatives. I was paying board, so it was relatively cheap. And then it was like this whole new world opened up, and I was in Sydney, and of course I just wanted to do everything and buy everything, and I did that for a long, long time, and it gave me a lot of freedom. And I never thought, oh, I should be saving some of this. Like, I didn't really give that second thought at that point, because I did manage to buy a car, my first car, so I kind of made sure I had enough money to do that. But then there's these other things that come into the equation, like a credit card, and all that. So get the credit card, then you can buy more things. And yeah, it was like that for a long time, because I suddenly had the freedom to be able to buy myself things, whatever I wanted, basically.
Now, did you have any role models? I mean, it's clear that you didn't have any saving role models and sort of people who are teaching about delayed gratification, but was there any conversations from your mum or your dad when you came back from that, the school holidays when you're working for Mr. Whippy and you go, look at all this money I've got? I mean, or were they just excited for you to be able to then treat yourself because it's your money and they didn't necessarily think about, well, are you going to save any of that? Was there any conversations that you remember around that sort of time when you're putting all those, shopping lists together of all the things you wanted to buy?
There wasn't really, Ben. I think they were just happy that I was working, that I had a good job, that I was working full time, that I had a car, that I could drive back home and visit them. And I think they were just happy that I was happy, and I was
Yeah.
at that time. I was just kind of living the life. I wasn't living large, but I was just like a early 20s, just having fun and enjoying life. Yeah, so they were just happy for me. Yeah, they never said like, oh, you should be saving some of that money, or because I guess they weren't savers themselves. So
Yeah.
there wasn't any role models really for me.
That were helping you along. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
what's the next chapter of the story, Catherine? From there, you're in Sydney. You're living week to week. You sort of got this contrast of early childhood. Now you've got some cash to go and do the things that you want to do. What's the
yeah.
next part of the story?
Well, I guess I mean that was my life for a long time, and I travelled a lot too, and then I guess meeting my husband now of almost 20 years. So we were quite like-minded in the things that we were interested in, and we used to talk about property. And he was, he's got a trade background as a carpenter, and he used to work for somebody just fixing up houses, and they would flip the houses back in the 80s. And and I by that point I'd saved up a little bit of money, and I remember I had about $17,000 saved up. And I said, oh, I'm really, I'm thinking about maybe buying a property and doing something with it. And so we had a look around to see, within Sydney, and Sydney was kind of not really affordable at that point. So we kind of looked regional and out, kind of big regional centres like Dubbo and places like that. So we basically focused on the search for a property in Dubbo and purchased a property there. I don't know if I can tell you what it was back then, but it was pretty cheap. It was, I believe it was the local drug dealer's house that we bought. It was trashed. It was absolutely
Mortgagee and
trashed.
possession sale, was it?
It probably should have been, but
What were some of
it
the
had good
baggage that came with
bones.
that, Catherine?
Oh, it was absolutely trashed. It's like the dogs had, slept in the house, lived in the house. There was cameras everywhere. It was mold. It was horrible. Like people would walk in there, and just my parents included, and just go, "You're not going to buy this, are you?" But we could
Yeah.
kind of see it had good bones to it, high ceilings, and it had potential to it. So everything was old. It had never been. It was an original. I guess it was 1950s era, and it had never been looked after. So it was in a state of disrepair, but it had good bones to it. So we ended up
Okay.
We're
buying
talking
that property.
brick veneer or weatherboard?
It's a fibro. It's a fibro with a faux brick cladding. So
Oh yeah.
we
One
talked
of those
Beautiful.
beauties. Yeah.
to have a look at it. We talked about, we'll just check the mortar in the brick to make sure that it's all good. And there was no mortar in the brick because it was all fake. It was fake mortar and fake
Yeah.
brick.
Fake
It was
cladding.
just this
Yes.
really,
Yes.
yeah, fake cladding, yes. So it
So
was
when you
just a
pulled that
very
off, it was a
ugly.
weatherboard.
It was weatherboard, yes, old weatherboard.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Okay.
we proceeded to do a renovation. We had 2 weeks because everyone, we were all working full time. So we went up, took 2 weeks off, brought in some family and friends, and went up there, did a 2-week reno, put new carpet in, put a new little bathroom in, and just painted it, took all the ugly wallpaper off, and just kind of, made it look a lot more habitable. And the funny thing was that you'd be there renovating, and people would drive into the driveway because they thought it was still the local drug dealer, and they just kind of toot
Yeah, I
the
was going to
horn
ask
and
about that.
pop your head out. No, 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 they're not here
No,
anymore. They
no.
don't live here.
Put a
So
little
yeah,
plaque out the front saying "No drugs for sale here."
people pretty much cottoned onto that pretty quickly. Yeah.
So there was no additional baggage that came from that. The occasional person dropping off, stopping by to see if it was still available, but there was no other issues other than that.
No other issues. No. Like, it was in a pretty good neighborhood too. So, it wasn't the worst house on the best street. It was, it was a decent street in Dubbo, and, like a nice little neighborhood. The houses in the area were just nice houses, nothing flash. But it was just a great little house to get into the market because it was the only thing I could really afford. And I remember going to the mortgage broker back then, and I really had not a lot of experience with mortgages or anything. And so I had 10,000 for the renovation, and I had 7,000 for the deposit. And she said, "Oh, it's not enough for the deposit," back then. So she organised to get a bank bond, which I think is the same thing now as LMI. Like that was back then.
Yep.
So I could actually get the deposit, put that $7,000 onto purchasing the property.
Sorry, Catherine, do you roughly remember what the purchase price was?
Yeah, it was 142,000.
142.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was
So
that
so we've
price
got
because no one else wanted it. No one else wanted to buy it. But we kind of saw
Give us
this
context.
little
Give us context of someone else. If it's similar property, 2 streets away, you paid 142.
Yeah.
If it was 2 streets away, what
Yeah.
would you have had to pay?
Oh, they probably were twice the price around that time.
Oh wow.
250,
Yep.
280. Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Now, Catherine, what's interesting that's obviously the 17,000 story to get you started, but there's a little bit of a backstory in there that I'm seeing in the notes here about second marriages, childcare support commitments, large tax debts, and self-employment. Can you sort of just give us a bit of that story to sort of know that really when you started your property investment story, there's this middle bit
Yeah.
that got you to a situation, whereas I've got a note here to sort of saying, when did you work out that things weren't going to be okay and you needed to do something? So can you take us through that part of the story to get us to why you took action?
Yeah, so I guess the bit with the childcare commitments and the tax debt is my husband's story. So that's why,
Yep.
he's happy for me to talk about it, but I guess I'll be talking on his behalf about that. So when I met him, I didn't have kids. He had
Yep.
4 kids, and he had obviously child, commitments to pay.
Yes.
And then after a few years, I discovered that he had this tax debt that was you don't meet someone and go, "Hey, by the way, I've got 4 kids and a tax debt."
No.
So
And not unusual
you
too,
know,
given he's a carpenter. Quite often, staying on top of your tax, he's not Robinson Crusoe. There's a lot of people who can relate to that story.
Yeah, look, I think when you're self-employed and you're going from job to job and trying to kind of support your family, I think for a lot of people, I kind of saw that a lot with his line of work, and so you kind of spend what you get, and then you don't have anything left to pay back. So
They get in trouble with
I
their BAS payments, and that's sort of part of that story, right?
exactly,
Yep.
yeah,
So just
Yeah.
creeps up on. Yep. Again, not alone. There's
Yeah.
plenty of sole traders and sort of tradies out there that are struggling with that particular story.
Yeah, not only
Yeah.
because you're collecting GST, so you've got that money
Correct.
that you've got access to, and then you've got a pay-as-you-go instalment every 3 months, and then all of a sudden when
Yeah.
the 28th of October comes around or whenever,
Yeah.
it becomes a lot for a lot of people. So, so
Yeah.
to
It's,
really talking to Jeff here and the people that can relate to Jeff, it's not unusual.
Mm.
yeah. I think for a lot of tradies, they get a lot of work. They get a golden period of work, and they're just working all the time, and then suddenly there's nothing. And so the work really fluctuates a lot, and it's really hard for people to pay. You know, it's really difficult for people to set aside that money to have that ability to go, I'm going to put this aside because I know I mightn't be getting as much steady work in the future. I would find that really difficult to do. Whereas when you're on a steady wage and you're getting paid every fortnight, it's kind of, you're just going from fortnight to fortnight. But that's really tricky. So
Correct.
he had a lot to juggle. Yeah. So we kind of worked through that. Over the years, he kind of came to an agreement to get rid of that debt. Obviously, his kids got older, and then I guess it put us in a position that we looked to the future and then what we could do after that property, because basically it was probably more like a single income that was looking after that first property, and me probably putting the money into that. But with the view that, okay, we'll just get on top of all this and then we'll move forward. And I think he really had the motivation that he wanted to get himself set up for the future. And, he just had that drive. So, so we're kind of on similar journeys.
So let me sort of see if I can sort of tell this story logically. So obviously, tax debts means lending accessibility is restricted potentially for Jeff as well. So that first property would have been bought with your PAYG salary as the
Yeah.
backstop for the bank. So that's allowed you, as again Jeff's tidying up his affairs, you've been able to move forward. You both used a lot of elbow grease in terms of getting into that first purchase. I'm assuming, was he on the loan on that very first purchase at the time, or like was his credit history and all of that acceptable enough for a bank to let him be on title or on loan?
It was in my name initially. I guess the value of his work, his contribution was to all the work that he put into the property. Where
Yeah.
it wasn't. It was like we had $10,000. I said, it was early days with us. I said, this is all I've got in the budget to kind of for everything, and it was kind of funded from me. Just initially.
Brilliant. So, and that's to the point. Yeah, that's to the point. I mean, I think this is important for the community to understand. So Jeff's had a past history. He's got himself, sort of maintenance payments for the children potentially as well. So there's a lot of back history there. And again, we don't have the privilege of talking to Jeff directly, but what the message here I just want to land for the community is that doesn't mean that there's not necessarily further opportunity or to rectify some of those past challenges that you've had. And I think as we now get into unpacking the next stage on your journey, Catherine, that's going to show that it is potentially possible. So here we are. We've got one property in Dubbo. We've obviously added some value to that property. Tell us what you did about then sort of looking at the equity in that property and potentially seeing what the next part of that journey was.
So, I guess we had a similar outlook as to, oh, look what we can do, with, we weren't doing a block reno on it. We were doing a basic reno on it that made the property livable. And we did build quite a bit of equity into that property. So we'd kind of spend weekends looking around in Sydney and going and looking at places, and then thought, okay, well, what's our affordability? What's the range that we can go? So we went back to the broker. They said, oh, okay, well, you can use this equity to purchase your next property. So we ended up buying a property in Sydney, a 2-unit brick apartment in a 2-story walk up, and pretty much did the same thing in there as well. So that was kind of the next step.
And how many in the block? Just so for context, one of the little old 70s unit blocks, as you said, 2 stories high, 2 bedroom, 1 bath sort of apartment, maybe 65 square meters and then you just freshened it up, or was it anything more significant? Like, did you go the whole hog with the kitchen and bathroom and toilet area, or did you just really freshen it up, with some really fundamental paint and maybe carpets?
Yeah, look, the initial renovation on that property was very basic: flooring, paint. I think we had to put a new stove in because the other one looked like it was a potential fire hazard if anyone used it. And it was one of those classic brick eight units in the block.
Yeah.
2 flights of stairs. It had a garage, which was really appealing to us. It had a lock-up garage. A lot of the places around there have just a car space, but this had a garage, and it just had a little bit more than a lot of places we looked at. It had a nice feng shui when you walked in. It had a nice layout. It had a lot of sunshine, natural light in it, and airflow. It had an outlook over some trees. In the city, it's nice to kind of see some trees. And it was built by an old Greek guy who built the whole block, and then rented it for years, and then he passed away, and then they sold all the units individually, and the 8 units sold pretty much over the space of a couple of months, I believe. And that was one of them that one of the purchases was us for that unit.
What suburb are we talking?
It was also close
Catherine?
to the railway station, so you could walk 10 minutes to the railway station. That was another tick. Yes.
Yeah. But what suburb are we talking here, Catherine?
We're talking about Wiley Park, which is Lakemba Punch Bowl, kind of southwest. It's about 15 kilometres. We drew this ring around the CBD of Sydney, and we went, okay, well, the 10 kilometres is unaffordable for us. So we went, okay, we'll go 15 kilometres. So we had a look at every suburb, 15 kilometres around Sydney, and go, okay, well, what's the prices? So we just go on, and have a look at all the prices, what's sold, go and have a look at stuff, and you'd walk in, and some of them you just, they were little dog boxes that wasn't appealing. So that was kind of our ground rules, that we'd just go in and okay, this is the affordable ring in Sydney or further out. Yeah,
gotcha.
Can I ask, one of your ground rules around the floor plan, was the toilet separate to the bathroom?
Yes, and it also had its own laundry. Yeah.
So you're probably talking in the 70 plus square meters internal.
Definitely,
for that sort of space, if you're going to sort of fit all that. And I think that's really important for our community. If you are looking at these old classic unit blocks and you're looking to potentially, the floor plan is really important in these things. So go and have a look at as many as you can, because you'll know a good floor plan when you see it, and you'll get a sense of space and size, where you want to make sure that the dining table is, there's enough space for a dining table and the couch in the living area, not just the couch and basically the kitchen bench. And then in terms of, if it's a 2-bedroom, you absolutely want to have the toilet separate from the bathroom and shower, or bath or whatever it is, because ultimately you've got a bigger letting pool in terms of what that looks like. So you've got a choice of 2 strangers as a flat share, or you've got basically a couple with a spare bedroom for people who are visiting. But at least that that toilet separation is really, really important in those floor plans.
We're getting a masterclass on buying 2-bedroom flats in Sydney here, Ben, because separate garage, lock up, separate laundry, separate toilet. Catherine said she's got an outlook that was looking over trees, not looking at someone else. I mean, for those listening, this is a masterclass on how to buy an apartment in Sydney.
Yeah. I would even to this day, I would much prefer buying those old brick units and walking up 2 flights of stairs with my shopping than I would in a new construction. Absolutely.
Yeah,
To this
I
day.
hear you.
Yeah.
Hey, Catherine, just on the previous one, probably back in 2009 or 10, I bought an apartment for a client in Hawthorne here in Victoria, and it was similar. It was a 70s style. There was probably 12 in the block. Really nice spot. But what I bought it from, it was a really older gentleman who had lived in there and hoarded and old newspapers from the 50s. And in some places, the wall had splashes of what seemed like blood, right? From if someone had met with a gunshot
Foul play or something.
in the it was. But we obviously bought it for location, and what actually happened is when the valuer valued the property, they gave it a zero valuation. Zero. We won't value this. So what we had to do is, it was a second tier lender. So we had to go and rejig the lending, and we had to go and go to one of the four pillars. And they obviously then, well, not obviously, but they then valued it with some value that was significantly down. But we were actually able to buy at the price that we went and renovated it, and it looked amazing afterwards. Did you have any valuation issues on the drug dealer house on the first one?
No, because I think it was so cheap. Like, yeah, it was so cheap, and I don't think there was an issue. I think because we had a mortgage broker, they were super helpful. She was just so helpful for me to get me in, and I think if there were any issues, I think she just helped push, just push it
She knew what to
through.
do.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah,
Gotcha.
I
All
can't
right. So
remember
Sounds
anything.
like you bought at
Yeah.
land value anyway, if it's half the price of what. Yeah. So.
It's not a big block
all
of
right. So
land. That's right.
we bought the second property in Sydney. What happens next? Because we can clearly see your strategy forming here. Let's go in. Let's use our elbow grease. Let's add some value. So what happens after that second property?
So we turned totally about face, and thought we'd mix it up a bit. And I guess this is where we kind of a little bit different from what you guys always talk about, like spreading out your risk a little bit and not focusing on buying things in the one place too much. But, I don't
Or
think
one state.
you were around then. So we went out to Western Sydney, and there was a lot of house and land packages. So we thought, we'll buy a block of land and then get someone else to build the house and do all the hard work, because we'd been renovating a few times. And so we bought this block of land, and we realised that instead of buying the house and the land, if you bought the land separately and then found your own builder, that you saved a bit of money on the tax. So we just did that. So we're like, okay, that's good. Let's just buy the land. And then we went around to all the display homes and picked out a house, a builder. It was a 300 square metre block. So very much little ticky-tacky houses beside each other. It's out near, kind of.
Right.
I guess the attraction for us was that there was going to be an airport built out there one day. It was, quite a few years ago. I think it was about 2012, around then. And so for us, there's going to be a new airport in Sydney. As you know, our existing airport is pretty much a nightmare to get to and get out of. So we thought, that's going to bring, people who want to live there and work there. And so that was the kind of thinking behind that. And so we got this land, which had been released. It was a school out there that had a lot of land, and so they released all these blocks of land. So we bought the land, found the builder, and then proceeded to build a four bedroom, 2 bathroom, single garage house with a tiny little postage stamp yard in the back. And that took probably 18 months to a completion. And then rented it out from day one, and they're actually the same people who've been living in there the whole time. So that's one thing we've been
almost
lucky.
a decade.
Yeah, we've had good tenants in our properties. I think we kind of look after them. when things need repairing, we'll make sure that we attend to that quickly. I don't want to save money by not having a rental manager. Like, I want them to do that work. I'm busy working, and they do that, and they do it better. And they give you rental appraisals and things like that. They manage any issues. So yeah, so that was a really lovely house, still the same people in there, and it was very hands off. So for us, it was like, it was actually a joy to build, because you just go and do the inspections every now and again. Yeah.
Now, so can you give me an idea in terms of, with the hands-on versus the hands-off, how has that performed compared to the ones where you've gone in and spruced them up or done significant sort of renovations to increase the value in the property early? Is it sort of just trended in the right direction?
I think so. I think initially, because there was a lot of new construction around that area, lots of new estates being released, and so it was just really slow, probably for the first 5 years. It's just kind of little
Yeah.
blips on the screen that just go up, and it's like, and so you try not to think about, it's not going to double in 7 to 10 years or whatever. But we just thought, no, our whole philosophy has been, we just set and forget and try and put it out of your mind, and not keep looking at figures and mulling over spreadsheets and things. But recently, the value has gone up substantially in that area. But I would say, if you're looking at trying to make money overnight really quickly, don't buy and build a house on a new estate, because it won't happen. It will not happen. That, from my experience from building one.
Yeah, so it's a sample of one, but let's be honest. There are obviously other evidences out there, but to your point, it's all house and no land, or you could, when you say a post, a stamp sort of size backyard, like you probably couldn't even put a swing in there. Certainly couldn't play some backyard cricket in it at sort of 300. I did some research recently at certain house and land packages, and most of them are like these houses that we're talking about with the single garage, so you can get one in the garage and then one car in front, and you've got these sort of 4 and 2 sort of configurations, but the land size is like 312 square meters. Like, there is nothing other than house. You are brick to brick, wall to wall. I don't even know why they bother putting a fence between them. Like, you shouldn't even have a fence. Like, there's no need for it, because but that's the point. So all of a sudden, in terms of variety and scarcity and an emotional connection to it, no, it's Legoland, and there's lots of them in a very simple way. Now, you did pick your own builder, which is great. So maybe your floor plan and your style is a little bit different to the others. But yeah, you get out there in this homogenous sort of housing that's being built out there. Just from that our point of view, yep, they'll rent okay, but the growth will be, there's no point of difference. So you just got to be careful. All you're going to get is what we call system growth, which is the growth that happens in the land that's sort of going on out in those areas. There's no real variety in terms of what you're getting. So to your point, Catherine, you said that's all right. It was the set and forget, and we're happy to wait the decades, in terms of getting that story. And so it's still, my question, did you ever think that, given the first 5 years, it was quite sluggish in its growth, that you might flip it or turn it over?
No, not really. We just thought, the whole property investment journey, I guess, for us was to do it up or buy it, and then just hold it. So I guess the philosophy for us is that once we retire, we don't want to be relying on government handouts, like the pension or anything like we want to be independent and be able to, have some money, our own money, when we're older, and not be governed by what the government gives you on a pension. We don't need to be rich, super rich. We just want to be comfortable,
In control of your time.
Yeah, that's right. Like, it's not about being the richest person in the street. Like, we don't care about that. There's more important things to life than that.
Well
so
said.
that's
Well
kind of
said.
been the motivation to keep them for so long. And I guess we started a little bit later. Our journey started a bit later in life too. So it was always like, oh, like the time frame, is it all going to, be that valuable later on when you're retired? And, then you've got to decide whether you keep them or sell them or what. Yeah. So, yeah, it's
So let's
interesting
set the
things to
scene.
keep.
How old were you when you did start? What sort of decade bracket were you in?
Yeah, I was almost in my 40s by then. And my husband was in his 40s. So, I mean, that's pretty young. I reckon it's pretty young these days. Um,
It is.
but yeah, it was like, I used to think 40 was old, but now I think
Yeah.
60
No,
is
We all
young.
we
now we
all
know
did
better as
in
we look
our
backwards.
50s.
But Catherine, I guess we get a lot of people write into us and say, "Is it too late to start?" So I
Yeah,
think one of
yeah,
the wonderful parts about your story is you've actually demonstrated that you didn't start young, you started later, and what
mm,
the results look like. So we can definitely talk to that as we go through. But what we've uncovered here is a place in Dubbo, a 2-bedroom flat in Sydney. You've gone out to Western Sydney, but this is not the end of the property story for you because there's more. So what happens next?
no. So then we thought we'd pivot and do something else for a change. So we went regional again, but this time we went on the coast and mid north coast, New South Wales. So still in New South Wales, we didn't really go outside of New South Wales, and that was purely, I guess, part of the reason that if we bought a place, we had to be able to travel to it to renovate when you took holidays and get to it easily.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so we found that the market on the mid north coast had been very flat for a very long time, and I had a friend who lived up here, and she said, yeah, like nothing is selling. And we used to drive around town and go, oh, there's all these like lovely old beach shacks that are just sitting there and not selling, and because people had their holiday home but they were trying to offload them because they couldn't carry them, but they weren't selling. And I said to my husband, it's like, oh, maybe we should look at, there wasn't much science to it really. It was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, maybe we should have a look at around here. And so we started just doing a bit of research. We just didn't walk out one day and buy the first thing we saw. We did a bit of research on what was good and what was selling and what they were selling for, and ended up buying a freestanding house in town. And and it was, I call it a crab shack. It, with 1950s fibro asbestos. Again, we did another renovation on it, very basic, got the floorboards polished, painted, put a new little kitchen in, and then rented it back out again. So that was, I think the rental market was good, but just the sales wasn't doing too well. So I think we were kind of right on the end of that real lull of sales in the area. And then because not long after that, things started picking up again. And that was kind of 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes, you know, there's not a great science to it. We don't spend hours
Well,
and days
Well, there is
looking.
a very big takeaway here, though, is that you actually took action, right? And I think that's that
Mm,
statistically you're in a rare company now because to have 4 properties is statistically unusual. Um,
mm,
so first of all, but secondly, you didn't overanalyze it either. You didn't get paralysis by analysis. You had a very clear path of accumulation, and that you were using the hands-on approach, the active approach to create
yeah,
the equity in these
yeah,
properties, which has been
yeah,
amazing, right? And you said you've only bought New South Wales, but it's probably one of those states where if you have got concentration in New South Wales, it actually has served you very well over the last decade or so. So
mm,
that diversification or the lack of diversification actually served you at that point in time that you were doing it. Um, so
yeah.
we've got this crab shack that you've renovated and you've got a tenant in, but there's more. what happens next?
Well, there is another property in Sydney. We went back to looking, again like that affordability and kind of pinpoint suburbs. So you do a search and you put in, you go from the lowest price and put a search in, and then go, okay, what suburbs are we looking at? And then we found a property which was again an old brick flats. I think there's 15 in the whole block. This one was a 3-bedroom, and I remember being in WA at the time. I think we were on holidays, and I saw this, and it was old. It was unrenovated. It was pretty original. Again, 2-story walk up, had a double garage, and I said, "Oh, we've got to come and have a look at this property when we come back home." And so we had a look at it, basically had a look at it there and then, and made an offer on it there and then. And the real estate agent kind of reeled back, like, because he wasn't expecting an offer, on a first inspection. So it just ticked a lot of boxes. Again, it was old, really solid, 2 stories, had 3 bedrooms. Sorry, the blocks were 2 stories, not this unit.
Yep.
It had a separate toilet. It had high ceilings, like the old places usually have a lot higher ceilings, so it has this sense of space about it. Nice floor plan, and we kind of said, okay, well, if we knock that wall out there, that can open up the kitchen. But we didn't do anything when we first bought it. We just basically rented it out until we could kind of get the time and afford to be able to do the renovation. So we spent a bit of time just working out a floor plan and what we needed to do in a budget when we could get in and do the renovation. So yeah, in a great area again, in Gymea, which is Sutherland Shire. It's literally 5 minutes walk to the train station. So for us, with a lot of these units, it was about the appeal of public transport, because in Sydney, the commuting is, a big issue. So
Terrific.
being able to be near a train station was a big tick for us, but far enough from it not to impact.
And Catherine, with the strata units, have you had any challenges? Has there been any sort of significant expense events as part of the body corporate or anything like that?
Well, not really. They're just old, solid units. I mean, it had probably some plumbing from some trees. But another thing that's really appealing about these is the strata is usually so much cheaper. Like, we were
Super
looking
low.
at new builds, and the
Yeah.
strata was like, yeah, compared, you can't, what you're getting for your money is for strata. And
Well,
then
if you think
there were a
about it,
lot of,
it's just building
yeah,
insurance and a little bit of maintenance. No
Yeah.
pools, no lifts, no caretakers, no. You're not in a zone that's got building insurance, like Ben's talked a couple of times on this podcast about being in far north
yeah,
Queensland, where you're paying extraordinary insurance bills.
yeah,
It's pretty straightforward
yeah,
what you're actually paying
yeah.
the body
Yeah.
corporate for.
Yeah, and it's a pretty ugly looking block of units. There's nothing pretty about it.
Yeah.
I'd love to get it rendered and all that, but you know what? It's functional, and people love living in the area. It's a really lovely area. There's a village there of shops and cafes. It's just got that lovely lifestyle. There's schools close by. So for us, 3-bedroom opens up that market to 3 friends living together or a young family living there. There's a little patch of grass, near the block of units. So it opened up the appeal of the rental to more people, I guess, for us.
Reliable
is
and
why we-
durable is what we like to refer them as, or sometimes ugly
Yeah,
ducklings, if
Ugly duckling.
yeah,
as part of
they're,
that
they're
particular
just
story, right?
they're just
So,
gems.
so
Yeah,
Ben, I think it's important too to sort of for our audience is Sydney is the most mature medium to high density market in the country, right? So if anyone listens to the back catalogue of our podcast, we encourage people away from the apartment market, largely because of land value and the maturity of the marketplace. But Sydney is different. because you've got an ocean, you've got a mountain range, you've got the river system to the north, and you've got the national park to the south. So you've got these geographical constraints, and tipping all these people into those geographical constraints means that that particular market accepts sort of we're talking about medium density here, not so much high density, but even though the history of a lot of high density stuff in Sydney's actually gone pretty good. So it's an important educational piece that you're demonstrating here, Catherine, that you've given a masterclass, even this one you bought in the Shire, again, public transport, the floor plan, all the things that you've just talked about. They are sort of checkbox or checklist tips for people who want to buy apartments, but it's different. New South Wales, and particularly the very high density parts of New South Wales, has more of an appetite for this type of market, as opposed to other cities like Perth, for example, and typically Brisbane, and even Melbourne's been a bit flat on, even though it's a really dense and metropolis city, it's been a bit flat in that particular market as well, because there's been so much opportunity to still go out to the west or still go out to some of the subdivisions. But even now, Melbourne is probably starting to enter a new phase of where people are probably going to turn their attention to that type of living, Catherine, largely because if they're gonna compromise on where they want to be to go super far out for a house or have to go regionals, they'll probably just go, well, maybe I will start to do medium density. But anyway, I went off on a little tangent there. But the important thing here is you've built a really impressive portfolio here. It's now got properties that total 5. With this last one, how much did you have to do to put elbow grease into that one?
Did replace the flooring, new kitchen. So we actually bought an old kitchen from someone else who was demoing their kitchen. So we pulled it out and then we put it back into this place. So, we were saving money left, right, and centre. We're on a budget, new paint, just the fittings, like the fans, for instance, like they were the old ones with the cane inserts in them. Like it just dated it, so you just get a really plain, simple, sleek fan that is not really expensive, but it looks good. Just things like that, really neutral colours. Yeah, nothing that was going to date too quickly. We did splurge on a Bunnings bench top though, and it wasn't expensive, but that was just because that's the kind of centerpiece of the home. So we did spend some money on a nice new bench top rather than use the old one that we pulled out of the other house.
Beautiful. Now, Catherine, with all this in investing and so forth, and as you're saying, on a budget and so forth, what sort of money management or what sort of system were you using to know that you could go again? And one thing we need context on: are you rent vesting, or do you also own in your own home? How's all that played out? Some coming so late, like in your early 40s, to building out what is now a $4 million property portfolio.
I think we've done a little bit of both. We've done rent vesting as well as kind of living in the property. We lived in the last property while we were renovating it, so we could work on the weekends and at night. So we just put a big bit of plastic between the living and the renovation area. And so I always say, I experienced brick dust, gyprock dust, and sawdust, in that order while we were living it, So, so just kind of save money. We'd live in some of them and do them up, and then others we'd just do it when, it was between a tenant, for example.
So you're renting now, or have you bought something for yourselves?
So, well, I think you always talk about delayed gratification. So this is our delayed gratification. So we've just moved into our crab shack, which actually got demoed, and we did a knockdown rebuild on our crab shack. And we lived
Probably
in a caravan.
4 for those playing along at home.
Yeah.
Yes, we lived in a caravan. So it took about 7 months for the demo and the build. So we house sat for 2.5 months. And then we lived in a caravan in my dad's backyard for 4 months in winter. And then
Wow.
last week we moved into our new house. So yeah, so the
Yay.
yeah, so
Well
it's kind
done.
of, we always said, oh, it'd be really nice to build our own place. And, and there was kind of a dream kind of thing, which you think might happen. But then it's kind of like the more you think about it, the more, it sometimes it does happen. Yeah. And we've
Okay.
both got a similar outlook, just very motivated to get to, I don't know, just get results and, keep going forward, despite setbacks. There's been setbacks all the way. There's been health issues, there's been lots of things, but we always had that mindset of, yeah, what we're doing is the right thing. Um, and it just takes time. You just can't expect it to happen. It takes time and it takes a lot of hard work.
It does.
It
So, Catherine,
does.
can you
Yeah.
tell us what the North Star was? Like, obviously, we've just had this highlights package of what's largely been a decade and about 12 years, if I've got my calculations right. Tell me if I'm wrong. But we got the highlights
Yeah,
package of
probably.
that. But what was the North Star? What was keeping you? What was the vision that was pulling you towards it when you had all those setbacks you talked about and health consequences and all of the like? What was it that you had your eyes firmly set on?
Well, I think we always had a strong idea about where we wanted to end up, and we both had the motivation for that. Um, and I guess knowing that one day we might have a new house somewhere, we didn't know where we were going to be. Um, it was, I don't know, it was just something that we worked towards. It was, yeah. Can I beat?
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, look, you've had a couple of things, as you said, you've had the setbacks and you've had some of those challenges, health issues you made mention of. The luxury of also potentially not having the children, like a lot of people need to get context around that in terms of, obviously Jeff's previous management, but being able to be flexible because you don't have to worry about moving kids out of different schools or doing all of those other
Yeah,
programs and the cost,
yeah.
there's the cost of raising children. So we also want to put that into context as well. But you've made pretty much every post a winner. And I wrote down time. Time has been your best ally in terms of what you've
Mm,
put together, right? And you've just persisted. As you say, you just push
mm,
forward. And so all of a sudden now,
mm,
and if I have it right, 2008 was the starting sort of point on this journey. So it's about 16 years
Yeah.
in
mm.
terms of what that sort of. But so my final question to you, Catherine, is: are we done? We've got the big rock in the jar in terms of the family home. We've now got
Mm.
effectively passive income that's coming off the other investment properties as we retired it. I'm assuming there's still some debt there that we need to pay down. So when do you feel like you'll get over that threshold and that passive income? And to your very earlier point, that you didn't want to be relying
Mm.
on government, you wanted to be self-sufficient in retirement, you wanted to have financial security. Well, tick financial security. Um, in terms of financial reliance on nobody else other than yourself, we're about to give that tick because effectively we're well and truly our loan to value ratio is in really strong territory there. So are we done here, or is this going to become a hobby business going forward?
I always we both love renovating, so being on the tools. So I've learned how to tile and I'm a good painter. My husband does not like painting at all. He'll do all the other jobs before he picks up a paintbrush. I think I would love to do that in retirement, just do a place up. I love transforming places and just finding a little gem and going, oh, this is the one, and why is that the one compared to the others? You just kind of know after a while. Um, I think for now, like we kind of reached that point where it's like we're just going to enjoy life now and not have all that pressure of looking for other things and
Living in a
juggling money,
caravan. Yeah.
living in a caravan, and maybe having a bit more of a your lifestyle, like traveling, a bit in the old van, and but I never say never either, So yeah, but I think
Yeah.
we're
Sounds
happy.
like you've
We
got the
don't
bug.
need.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We don't need to have 10 properties. I think we're comfortable with where we are right now. And I think, we've looked at it, looked at the budgets and going, I think, maybe in 5, 10 years we'll be in a good spot that we can go, well, maybe we will have to sell something, a couple. But with your super and things like that, maybe we'll be okay and we'll get by.
Hey, Catherine, your friends listening to this, guess what they're seeing you as? A gun for hire. You and Jeff to basically go and work on their reno projects for them. maybe you can, sort of hire yourself out as project managers and renovating. Actually, we'd
Yeah.
probably see you on the block at some point there. Maybe just so you can scratch that itch.
Yeah, I've had friends say that we should go on the block, and I've said no, I'd prefer not to do the block. Stay a little
Yeah.
bit
Yeah.
more incognito.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
probably a wise word. Hey, my final question for you then, Catherine, is you've been listening to the podcast for a long time. Why? What is if you sort of have the floor now? What is it that you said I want to put my hand up and tell my story? What was it that you hoped that our audience would catch from your story?
Well, for me, I think that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how difficult your circumstances were growing up, or how poor you were, or how difficult it was. You don't have to be like that. You can choose the life that you want, but you don't have to live the same life in poverty, for example. I think you have, if you've got an idea and you've got the motivation and the willpower, that you can really transform your life. I think that you have to be realistic. So if you're looking at something, buying something in Bondi, I think that would never have happened for me, but I went, okay, well, where's the affordability, like realistically? Okay, it's not in Sydney initially, so go regional. It's like, I don't need to see the house every day, but I know that area, it's growing, it's got good infrastructure, it's got tourism, it's got all these boxes that it ticks, and it's a big regional town that people go to. So kind of don't narrow down your search to, oh, it's just got to be in Sydney because that's where I live. It's, you need to spread your wings a little bit more and have a look. And, you might have to get on the tools, and you might have to get on the paintbrush. You might have to rip up the old stinky carpet, but be prepared to get in and get dirty. And, you don't need to do a block transformation on a house to make it livable and habitable for someone to rent from you. Yeah, so I'd say, use my story as what you can do for yourself. Yeah,
Beautiful.
that's
Well
Well
said.
said. And I think that quite often a lot of people they actually don't know what is possible. Like, because we say money is simple, behavior is hard, but what your story does, Catherine, and even just that summary that you've just provided at the end, is actually the mindset shift that people can actually go, okay, she's done it. Maybe I can do it, because we always talk about our lives not a Disney movie. No one's coming to save you,
mm,
right? So as soon as you
mm,
actually take that responsibility, which you've done, and changed your mindset, which you've done, and shown a clear action orientation, which you and Jeff have done, um, that is what unlocks the code for getting out of circumstances, no matter what your environment is. So, if you have had a tough start, yeah, it's definitely challenging, but it doesn't mean it can't be done. So, I love that. I think there's a real theme that's coming through our summer series too, Ben, around that particular
Mm.
theme that we've
mm.
noticed in the conversations that we've been having. So, well done, Catherine. You're a legend. Well done. That's an
Yeah.
incredible story with an incredible portfolio.
Thanks, Bryce. And I'd have to say too, you know, having a partner with the same outlook and the same, you know, work ethic has been, you know, key to this as well. Absolutely.
You know how I summarise this up, Catherine? 2 negatives into a positive, right? Because that's effectively what happens. Jeff's had a bad financial challenges. It had you growing up with a sense of no real money around you. Both of you coming together off the back of those sort of moments, and turning, you know, getting together and becoming, you know, 2 negative elements pushing together make a positive element. And ultimately, you've gone on and done the job. So I think that's just an awesome story, and I think for our community, they should. You know, that doesn't motivate them, then I don't know what will. And to Bryce's point, yeah, we've got a couple of these, you know, sort of summer series episodes, which really do signify that, you know, that's not your plot in life. You ultimately get choices to make. Life is you making choices, and when you're going to do your hard, and how you're going to do that, and what sacrifices you're going to make, because nothing great is ever achieved without sacrifice or without determination and a bit of grit. And you've shown all of those elements as part of your story. And so we thank you very much for coming on and sharing your message with our great community.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Catherine. Well, there you go, Ben. What a resilient, remarkable woman. Seriously, I love the story about the drug dealer's house, but clearly that's worked out well for them. But they just were able to do renovations themselves. There was a bit of tax debt, husband's tax debt, that needed to be overcome early. There was some early struggles with money management, but here they are, just the story of no fuss, no frills, just getting on with it and accumulating and building up a portfolio that is well on its way to serving this family incredibly well.
Bryce, I'm going to break this down for everyone into one simple question. And this is a question that anyone who's in a household or thinking about their money and their retirement, it's one simple question. And that question is, am I going to be okay? Mm-hmm. When I get older, am I going to be okay? Now that obviously then resonates out into health and also, you know, family, and all my family going to be supported, and that financial security story. But that is the ultimate question that every household wants answered. Am I going to be okay? And it's normally the question that we have as advisors in terms of, we're asking all these other questions about lifestyle buddies and all, but that is that final question. Am I going to be okay financially? Which then will allow me to make sure that I can get the best support if I'm unwell, and all of those things, or I'm allowed to live my lifestyle by design in terms of what that story is. And Catherine and Jeff had decided, even though they started a little bit later, you know, they waited till the family was a certain age of 4 kids, right, in terms of, you know, that position of growing up and all of those other challenges. They put a lot of elbow grease and sacrifice into building out the portfolio. So they have accelerated their outcome by putting that and making those sacrifices, living in the caravan, you know, to basically get the job done. But you know, big story here for me, Bryce, not too late to start. Not too late to start to achieve financial security. Am I going to be okay? So I think it's a terrific motivational message at this time of the year, as to set yourself up for a successful 2025. It's all here.
I agree, Ben. And Catherine, I don't think you might realise that you are a poster person for a lot of questions that we get, because a lot of people write into us and say, when is it too late to start? And I think that you are not only a story of resilience and what it takes to get ahead, but you also give hope for folks who didn't start in their 20s or 30s, like some of our guests, or Ben and I started when we were in our 20s, but you started later in life, and still you've got an incredible portfolio that you've built up because you're prepared to. Well, hopefully people are seeing these trends, Ben, but delayed gratification, prepared to be resilient, prepared to go the extra mile, prepared to do a little bit more than what other people are prepared to do. And that is well and truly what we got from Catherine's story.
Another little bit of success in there, Bryce. Little success leaves clues. More money smarts user.
Yeah.
You know, another tick in that box. What are they doing? What's their secret sauce? no secret sauce.
Yeah.
Just building habits, taking positive mindset, belief in terms of what they're doing, educating themselves, taking action, using tools and systems and people, professionals to help them get along the way.
Free tools and systems, Ben.
There we go.
MOOR.com.au. So, yeah, I mean, success does leave clues. And people really want it to be jazz hand stuff. They really do think that it's something out of the ordinary, extraordinary, but it's not. It's actually doing the basics well over and over and over and over again. So, Catherine, you are an incredible human. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story, Ben. And just for those folks who have been inspired by Catherine's story and all of the summer series stories before her, we had a webinar this week. So if you click on the link in the show description, you'll be able to get access to the replay from that webinar. So yes, it's the end of January, folks. New Year's resolutions are starting to get a little thin, but it's not too late. In fact, it is an incredible time to really set yourself up for the year. So go and watch that webinar. It is a 101 on how to manage your money better this year for 2025, so that not only can you get on top of it, you can be a summer series guest for us at the end of this year. And ultimately, when all is said and done, it's just a wonderful feeling to be in control of your money, folks. So if you don't feel in control, go and get in control. It's not that hard. The resources are available for you, and it's going to cost you absolutely nothing, mate. So it's always a pleasure hanging out with you, Ben, at this time of the year. It's always a pleasure interviewing wonderful people like Catherine together. And until next week, mate.
Knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it like our great summer series guests have been doing.
Well said, mate. See you next week, folks.